questions out there. Happy to answer questions about any aspects of this. Don't be shy. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have any chance of getting a mandatory renewable energy standard?
No. Wait. No. I didn't say this. The governor has really stopped even asking for it. As long as the Republicans control the House of Representatives, it's a non-starter. I'm not even sure that we have, if the Democrats control the Senate, I'm not sure whether we'll get out to, because we have some Democrats that vote against that too. Dominion does not like a mandatory RPS, and so because they don't like it, it's not likely to happen in Virginia. Well, you've done some work on that. Would you like to comment?
I think with the Clean Power Plan, how that works against us is that now people say, people who don't want to acknowledge that we need renewable energy say, hey, you got the Clean Power Plan, that's everything. That's all you need is in the Clean Power Plan. So that's been my experience, is that there's been kind of like the Clean Power Plan has kind of closed some conversations, some other conversations that we may need to have about renewable energy, because now, people are make decisions, say everything that you need should be wrapped up in the Clean Power Plan. So that's been my experience and the increased rejection of renewable portfolio standards and mandatory RPS.
Let me add one other thing to that. It's really important. The Clean Power Plan can be a driver for clean energy. And so all of us up here are working really hard to make sure that the Clean Power Plan, when it's implemented, becomes a driver for energy efficiency, solar and wind. It doesn't have to be. This is a really important point. The Clean Power Plan is not a magic bullet. It's not a silver bullet. I say it's like the 10% down payment on your house. I mean, we need to do a lot to reduce carbon. And the Clean Power Plan is like one of the first bricks in the foundation of that 10% down payment on the house. And so it can help us get wind and solar and efficiency in the state, but because it's not the strongest law out there, Dominion could just go ahead and continue to build gas plants. So this is why we need to work really hard on that. Next question. Go ahead.
You say Dominion is the key, but what can we do except elect a different legislature, which we're really trying to do? But what can we do to pressure Dominion to change that? I mean, as citizens.
Alexi, why don't you talk about that? We were talking about that.
That's a great question, and it's something I think about as well. I think there's a few things. One would be making your views known to your local papers, singling out Dominion for some of their activities. And Dominion itself, I like the idea of being a bit of a nosy customer, honestly, and saying, well, okay, you're telling me I can purchase green power. Where is that coming from, and why isn't it here locally? And I think then you can start engaging on the county level and say, hey, we're trying to get some stuff. Let's start pressuring Dominion to allow for changes, which I believe, and Glenn would be the expert on the policy, but I believe there are changes that would allow third-party providers to come in and sell. There are changes in terms of how we sell energy, which would be very, very important. Glenn talks a little bit about sometimes Dominion gets these sweetheart business deals. So finding out locally, what are your businesses paying for their power? I think raising awareness through LTEs is the most practical thing. I say letters to the editor, but also what we're thinking about is getting senior leaders together to meet with Dominion and pressing them on their issues as well.
Let me just add that. Is that Dominion really took a lot of big hits this past General Assembly session. They got a lot of bad press. Editorials in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, editorials in the Virginia Pilot, editorials in the Roanoke paper. I mean, they got beat up pretty bad because of their greed in terms of this so-called rate freeze. It really is a rate ceiling. I'm working with a number of different organizations, Chesapeake Climate Action Network, Appalachian Voices, and other groups too, to hold Dominion accountable and really begin to pound them with these issues. It's going to be a long fight because we can't match the money that they give to the legislature, but we're going to continue to persist. I'm going to go over here. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You said sell it, and it made an interesting thought in my mind. I worked in the aluminum industry. We had Reynolds Metals here and I worked there for a career. And I go back thinking about cans, and cans didn't make sense back in the 60s. It didn't make sense to the financial folks. We made them thicker. We did all kinds of crazy things. But when we found out that we could get to the public about recycling, and we could sell that idea, and it took some innovation at management level to say, I can make money at this. And, you know, cans can be disastrous, but people are still going to buy portable drinks of some kind. So how do you do it? Do you keep moving bottles? And we saw that we could tell people that glass bottles that we were moving around cost more to move, it was more weighty, you had to wash them, you did all kinds of things. Hey, the aluminum can recycles. And once we sold that to management, and once management saw that, it took off. And what we did, we had a number of PhDs that got recycling going. We did all kinds of things about, we now have curbside recycling. A whole lot of that came about because of the aluminum can, and you can recycle. So I think you can make the point to Dominion Power that you can make money at this. We're a capitalist type society, and as opposed to pushing, because I assure you, I could not push management in a direction. They had to see that it was going to go to the bottom line, and it can go to the bottom line. The new cars, look at what they're able to sell, and people are willing to pay more for it. You know, oh, it's going to be terrible. You know, but they are making money at this. So I just say that we need to find a way not to jam it at management, but to show them they can do this and make money at solar and wind and all those. We've got Alstom sitting here. We've got all kinds of good folks in this area that know this stuff, and we need to get them on our side to show Dominion those answers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll just say this, the dropping price of solar is a real driver here, just like the innovation of aluminum cans. And in that sense, Dominion is the reason they're greenwashing is because they see this is coming. We need to hurry them along because we're still falling behind. And it's just going to take a lot of pressure. I have no problem with Dominion making money. We would love them to do the right thing and make money. But right now, their intention is to build gas plants and build North End 3. That's what they know. People tend to do what they know, and that's part of the problem. Question over there?
Yeah, this is related to that question about Dominion. I'm concerned about the offshore wind demo project, which they appear to have complete control over, and they appear to be using it to prove that offshore wind power is not economically viable. I mean, they've gotten the estimates that somehow they've managed to get come in at $200 million per turbine, whereas up in Rhode Island, where the power monopoly is not controlling the project, they're doing it for $50 million, one-quarter the price per turbine. And so my question is, and it occurs to me that most likely Dominion is doing this because they have a conflict of interest. They're interested, they're heavily invested in gas. Why would they want diversify in wind? Is there any way they can control of this project? I wouldn't say out of the hands of Dominion, but at least try to get it diversified.
Yeah, so they announced that they were delaying this offshore wind pilot project, and the reason was because of the exorbitant cost, as you noted. And we pointed out this. We've been trying to get the attention of the governor because the governor is a big fan of offshore wind, sees it as a job driver. And just a month before they had made this announcement of a delay, he had a big press conference about the fact that they had this lease area for the pilot project. And then the day before they made this announcement, which was I think on Earth Day, he had talked about Earth Day, clean energy, and specifically mission offshore wind. So we're trying to get allies to put pressure on them. We're talking with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which gave them the lease. We're talking with the Department of Energy, which gave them the grants, and trying to turn the screws on them as best we can do. Anybody else want to talk about offshore?
Just to add that we're very supportive. We see the potential for offshore wind. And it's this kind of behavior that Glenn's mentioning where, EEN, we work in Ohio, we work in North Carolina, significantly in Pennsylvania, and all those states have different types of issues with their utility. Dominion talks a great game, and they don't see renewable, to your point about making money off the renewable sector, they don't see it as part of their bottom line yet. And if there is a way to pressure shareholders to make that push and to demonstrate here's what it could look like in Virginia, that's terrific. That would be an internal game. I think for those of us who aren't in the internal game, aren't working for Dominion, there's this external push for making the point, hey, Virginia should be leading the way Why are we letting New England lead the way? It's right there. And Glenn's was telling me we have power stations. We could absorb the power. Virginia should be a net producer of clean energy, of all things. And this is part of, I think, the public point we need to be making.
Okay, and then we'll go ahead. Yeah,
how do you see the State Corporation Commission not being able to review Dominion's base rates over the next 5 years, along with their possible phasing out of coal plants, playing in all this?
Well, I followed Senate Bill 1349 very closely in the session, and that's the bill that supposedly is a rate freeze, but really isn't a rate freeze. It basically means your bills can go up, but it can't go down. I'm trying to think what your question was. Here's the thing. Dominion got in front of the legislature, and they lied to them. And one of the reasons why we need some new legislators is we need people to call them on their lies. A lot of the legislators just let that stuff go by. They don't want to say, hey, that's not really true. Because I literally heard their vice president say, well, if the Clean Power Plan goes into effect, we won't be building any new gas plants in Virginia either. And what did they do? They just announced a new gas plant in Greensville. He lied to the legislature, to their face, and nobody. Fortunately, I was able to get up and rebut what he said, and he kind of backed down. But none of the legislators seemed to resent the fact that he lied to them. Similarly, they've said that they are doing us all, they're a for-profit corporation, and the selling point for this bill was kind of absurd because what they said they would do is they would absorb as much as $2 to $4 billion in stranded costs. Stranded costs are the costs that are left over when you close a coal plant prematurely. Okay, so you close a coal plant prematurely, and somebody's got to pay the freight, right? That's a stranded cost. But then you say, out of the goodness of our heart, we're going to absorb those stranded costs if you just freeze our rates. Now, why would a for-profit company agree to accept a $2 to $4 billion hit with stranded costs? It doesn't make sense. But very few members of the legislature caught them on it. So what we want to make sure is we're going to make sure that they have those stranded costs. Because we're going to do everything we can as this law rolls out to make sure they retire coal plants. Because right now they don't have any plans to retire any more coal plants. But I'll tell you one thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be pushing hard to retire coal plants because Virginia is the asthma capital of the nation. And there's a lot of people who are suffering from the poor air quality we have here. And one thing we can do is close this plant that's just around the corner from here.
But I understand at the end of 6 years, if they retire coal plants, that essentially comes on the taxpayers.
Once the 5 years is up, then so what are they going to do? They're going to wait for 5 years and then retire the coal plants and they won't have to pay, even though they agreed to absorb the cost during this 5-year window. So frankly, I have little regard for an opinion. Do you want to address some of the issues regarding coal and health?
It's very interesting on the health front. There was in the evangelical community, we work with groups that are, they have churches in coal mining towns. And so on the other side of this, you have workers, whereas it's a bit more like a company town. But even then, I'd say, as stewards, one of the things we like to say is, well, you have the health impacts, though, even in your local community. And as a local city, you have to diversify if you want to see the long-term future. If you want your kids to live here, it's not going to be in dirty energy. And it's just something you have to kind of get to the point of saying, okay, we're going to go a different direction. But it's the folks that are making these decisions are also doing it in a way where these local towns aren't necessarily understanding what's happening. So like in Kentucky, even parts of Virginia, it's, EPA is shutting us down. Versus, well, how about, is it competitive to be sold in the marketplace today? Your lunch is getting eaten by natural gas. So.
That's good. Just speaking in terms of the health impacts of living near a coal plant, I was in Richmond, California. Went to Richmond, California with the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, which is a partner of ours, and they talked about kind of what Alexi just talked about, like people in the community not really understanding what's happening and to some extent, and that there will be a coal dust storm that would happen, and families would get cut a check whenever that happened. So it almost like incentivized looking forward to coal dust storms. Even though there was tremendous health impacts from that, they got a check. It probably was nominal, but took